for a Congress who supported us to the nth degree, worked by all our RPCVs there, like Jim Leach, who was there every minute behind us, like Tim Petri, who's sitting at our table, like all the returned Peace Corps volunteers in the Congress, and all those who supported us as if they were RPCVs. Sil Conti, Hatfield, Inouye, Cranston, DeConcini, Leach, I had you again, Porter, Obie, Lehman, Fassell, Wynn, Wolfe, who's here, and so many others, but it's late tonight. And Barbara Bush, who traveled to Ghana for the 20th anniversary of Peace Corps, and her husband, who always visited volunteers. They were always there from the beginning of the 80s, and then when president. A real surge of funds came, with Paul Coverdale then and now pushing for the Peace Corps. I would like to say the surge continued, but you all know what is happening now. We must overcome. The Peace Corps must be ever more relevant, like Sarge says, in this post-Cold War world. We must make it happen. 10,000 volunteers are not enough. It won't happen, though, unless we have a plan to educate the newer members of Congress and the administration, get our story better out to the American public, coordinate with young idealistic Americans and the churches and the families of our volunteers. To grow stronger, we need the National Peace Corps Association to rival the AARP and the VFW combined. In 1983, I was invited to the White House for the state visit of Prime Minister Ratumara of Fiji. Everyone took their seats around this enormous table. President Reagan, Vice President Bush, Cap Weinberger, and the rest of the cabinet, and me. I wasn't invited very often. The Prime Minister and his delegation, they talked about world conditions, sugar quotas, nuclear-free zones. Then the President asked the Prime Minister to make his presentation. Ratumara, a very distinguished gentleman, drew himself up and said, "President Reagan, I bring to you today the sincere thanks of my government and my people." Everyone held their breath, total silence. "For the men and women of the Peace Corps who go out into our villages, who live with our people." He went on and on. I beamed. Vice President Bush leaned over afterwards and whispered, "What did you pay that man to say that?" A week later, OMB presented the budget to President Reagan with a cut for the Peace Corps. President Reagan said, "Don't cut the Peace Corps. That man last week, it's the only thing I got thanked for." Budget went up. President Bush asked kiddingly, "What'd you pay?" Well, we know one thing. It isn't for pay that volunteers volunteer their blood, their sacred honor. I can never forget those who died while I was director. Let us never forget those who have given their lives or were disabled in service. The volunteer sweat, I can never forget the sweat, the tears, the frustrations, the best efforts and successes of thousands of Peace Corps volunteers. I stand in awe and the deepest respect. I always thought I could be a volunteer until I went out and met them. How proud Phil and I are to be parents of a volunteer, Loret Ruppe, here tonight, and parents-in-law of her husband, Peter Parsons, both Nepal 52. Loret, would you please stand up? Can you imagine being in the Peace Corps with your mom as director and having her very same name? Wow, that took real courage. Thank you, Loret. You handled it brilliantly. And Peter, too, who's back in California with our 2 grandsons, babies, being a perfect father. This is like Oscar night, thanks to my nephew and niece, Robert and Sparky Rosenberger, Burundi, and my cousin Julie Pope, Sri Lanka right now. Thank God for the 7,000 who are out there while we sit here. Mark Guerin has the high honor and great responsibility, just like each director we honor here tonight has had, to support, protect, defend, and as C. Payne Lucas has always strongly advised, program, program, program for. Mark, our best wishes and strong support go with you. I ended many a speech of the 80s, and now tonight once more with this. Peace, that beautiful 5-letter word we all say, we crave and pray for, is up for grabs in the 90s. Is peace simply the absence of war, or is it the absence of the conditions that bring on war? the conditions of hunger, disease, poverty, illiteracy, despair. When 50% of the children die in a village before they are 5, when women walk miles for water and then search for wood to cook with, when farmers leave their villages where there are no jobs to flock to cities where there are no jobs, when neighbors ethnically cleanse their neighbors, then let's face it, America, the world is not at peace. And here at home, where 50% of our children live below the poverty level in many of our cities, where the homeless abound on our streets, when our nation's capital is bankrupt and our schools require metal detectors, racial tensions abound and immigrant bashing and downsizing terrorizes loyal workers, then let's face it, America, we are not at peace. Family of Peace Corps, we are called, we are chosen. We must respond again to our founders' challenge. Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country and the world. The towering task of Sarge Shriver still lies before us. We can do it. I salute you, and I thank each and every one of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Loret. Thank you, Loret. I'm pleased now to introduce my friend Mark Guerin. We've worked closely together for the past 3 years. He is a decent, thoughtful, energetic, and caring man. I strongly supported the President's decision to nominate him. He's doing a great job for all of us. And I hope you see what I see, that Mark Guerin's appointment, more than anything else, is dramatic evidence that this President is determined to protect and preserve the Peace Corps legacy, not only for our 35th birthday, but also for our 100th birthday and every birthday to follow. Please welcome our Peace Corps Director, Mark Guerin.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Donna. Imagine my position. I get to follow Hesburgh, Shalala, Sorensen, Wofford, Shriver, Ruppe, Chairman Leach, and of course, the former First Lady of the United States, Barbara Bush. But it's my deep honor, certainly, to be here. I've been on this job now for 6 months. And I can tell you each and every day has been an enormous, enormous experience for me. I started out, I will tell you one brief story, on a trip to Poland to see that part of the world. And our ambassador there was very kind to host a reception for me. And there were diplomats there and volunteers there, and one diplomat came up to me and said, "So, are you going to be teaching English?" And I said, "Well, no, I'm actually the Peace Corps director, and I'll be looking at volunteer sites and returning to Washington." He then said, "Well, are you going to be doing business education here or healthcare?" And I said, "No, I'm the Peace Corps director, and looking at volunteer sites and returning to Washington." And then he said, "Could you tell me, who's this reception for anyway?" And I didn't quite know what to say to the man. I said, "Well, actually, it's for me. I'm the director of the Peace Corps, and I'll be looking at it." So, Mr. Shriver, I'm working much harder at looking older these days. Given our budget worries, it's not particularly difficult. But I am very grateful, certainly, for the National Peace Corps Association. I've told my friend Chick Dombeck that this is such a treasure trove to the agency. I don't think anywhere across the country tonight friends of OSHA would be gathering to celebrate. No disrespect to OSHA. My guess is our distinguished Secretary of Health and Human Services is not going to have the friends of HHS gathered, or EPA. But the two people we honor tonight are in so many ways national treasures, for they really represent to all of us here that they've been stewards of one of this country's greatest gifts to the world, the Peace Corps. I know that all of the other former directors who are at the Peace Corps headquarters today will join me in saying that I don't think any two other people have done more for the Peace Corps than Sergeant Shriver and Loret Miller Ruppe. But before I say a word about our other directors, which is my task tonight, I'd like to also say to all of them how much I appreciate their counsel. I've had the chance to talk to all of them in assuming this job, and they've been truly helpful to me. As the new kid on the block, of course, the very tall shadow that they cast is a bit intimidating. But each of them has been a great source of ideas, of energy, of vision, and of inspiration to me on how best to run the agency. It's also the case that returned Peace Corps volunteers have a few ideas on how to run the agency. And now, Mr. Shriver, they're all on email to share those ideas with me. But as for Sergeant Shriver and Loret Ruppe, it's a particular honor for me to personally stand on their tall shoulders because they represent what is really important, and that's the bipartisan legacy of the Peace Corps. For my part, I take very seriously the trust that's been reposed to me in this job, and I want all of you to know, all the directors, the staff, the returned Peace Corps volunteers, that I'm going to do everything in my power to protect the Peace Corps, to have it grow, to have it flourish, and to prepare it for the 21st century. We have our challenges. We have our challenges, certainly, but considering the history, concerning the many challenges that the Peace Corps has faced, given the enormous support and goodwill that the Peace Corps has, they are all certainly surmountable. In our library at the Peace Corps, we have a great collection of speeches. Many things that all of you have written, all of your files, but that's another matter. I went down one day to look at some of the words of our honorees, and I found an original transcript of a press conference that Sergeant Shriver gave in 1961. Listen to what he said back then, as he was just assuming the job that I am now so honored to hold. He said the following: "The Peace Corps is going to take a lot of people by surprise. People who think that America has gone soft. People who think that the pioneering spirit in America is dead. People who do not think that our youth have the stamina, or the curiosity, or the sympathy, or the responsibility to be working representatives of the United States abroad." Those words, I believe, bear repetition today, as so many would question the so-called Generation X of today. We read a lot about how young Americans today are slackers. They have no ambition, they're jaded, cynical, too easily bored, but they're not up to the challenges that face our country. But the popular perception, I think, about it, young people today in the United States is just as wrong today as it was when Sergeant Shriver said those words and held this job. Every day we receive thousands of inquiries from across the United